Hey guys, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's agenda, we have Alexandra Zatarain, co-founder and VP of Brand and Marketing at 8Sleep, the world's first sleep fitness company that leverages innovation, technology, and personal biometrics. So welcome, Alexandra. Bienvenida. Super happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I am a co-founder and I lead brand and marketing at 8Sleep. 8Sleep is a health and wellness company focused on sleep fitness. What we essentially do is we use technology to help you sleep better. When we started the company now, maybe more than 8 years ago by now, we realized that there was no innovation in the sleep space that would actually go beyond just giving you data and actually help you optimize your sleep to perfection so that you could get the best recovery possible. So we set out in a mission to do just that. And people nowadays know us for our signature product, which is the pod. It's a technology you can put on any bed to allow you to track your biometrics, whether it's sleep and health, seamlessly without any wearables, and then uses that information to create the perfect microclimate for your sleep, which clinical data has proven now that people who sleep on the pod are getting up to 35% higher quality sleep. They get 10% more deep sleep. They get better recovery as measured by their HRV. So it's just really exciting to see that all those years of innovation have paid off.
Wow, 8 years. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a long career. And how do you start? Like, what do you do before starting this with your husband, your now husband? And I know that you went to school in Mexico for marketing, right?
Yes, correct. So I grew up in Mexico. That's where I'm originally from, where my parents are from. So I went to school in Mexico as well, in Monterrey. And then after I graduated from a communications degree, which has always been my passion, so no surprise that I do marketing and brand at 8Sleep. That's what I always wanted to do. I moved to New York City. I had already met my now husband, so we've been together for a long time, probably like 12 years now. And we just both of us had sort of like more different jobs. I wouldn't say regular jobs because he was actually an entrepreneur. He was a lawyer. Then he became an entrepreneur, had a couple of companies in a very different space. And I was just basically doing jobs as a marketer. And initially, actually, when I moved to New York, I was just like took an assistant job and just, anywhere where I could get a job basically and get my professional career started. And I made my way to 8Sleep when Mateo, who's my co-founder and my husband, and my other co-founder, Max, who's our CTO, who developed the technology, invited me to join them. And they said, well, we're looking to launch this product to market. We need someone who can bring this to consumers. Do you want to do that? You like marketing? I had been sort of helping them on the side. And I was really freaked out and scared because I had never actually done this specific type of work. So I was young, that was 8 years ago, and I was like 24. And I was really scared that because I didn't know, I wouldn't actually be able to succeed. So I was very candid with them. And I said, well, we'll figure it out if you trust me and we're able to connect with other people who have done this, like we'll figure it out. And I was very passionate about the mission. I think that was the most important thing for me, because I think most people don't realize when you decide to start a company that you should consider you'll be spending at least 10 years of your life building it. And so you need to just be very committed to what you're doing day in and day out. And there has to be, like, in my case, I really wanted there to be a bigger purpose to all of the work.
Wow. And especially since you were such a baby. I mean, if I'm allowed to say that, 24, it's like, and you started a company from scratch. I mean, and it wasn't only you and Mateo, you had like two more co-founders, right? So how was that experience, like building the company from scratch, raising money, gaining funds? How was that like, especially being a woman?
I think looking back, honestly, being that young was an advantage because I think I was very naive in my decision making, meaning you're probably less risk averse. When you're younger, you have, for good or bad, just less responsibilities, more flexibility. And I just felt like I could just eat the world in one bite and I could figure everything out. And I think that naiveness really plays to your advantage in that point in time when you're making such a big decision. Like, I left my comfortable job. I was working at a financial tech company in New York, right? Where you get your salary, your bonuses at the end of the year, and like just everything was sort of easier. We moved from New York to San Francisco for the first year of the company. And so it was just a big change in all respects. And when I now think back to those years, they were some of the most fun years, but in a different way than how they are fun today. They were hard in a lot of respects because we were creating a product that just didn't exist before. When we started putting together this technology, there was not even a clear way on how do we call it. People were not going online searching for a smart mattress cover or for like a sleep improvement machine. Like it just didn't exist. And so we were creating our own category. No one knew us. We didn't necessarily have tons of connections in Silicon Valley because all of us are actually immigrants, even though I was born in the United States, but none of us went to school here. We didn't have any networks. So that was really steep climb at the beginning, because when you're trying to hire, you're trying to raise funds and you don't have the networks, it's pretty hard. And I think that's one of the things that I admire the most in founders who have to go through that process, because I know what it's like. And you keep getting rejected mostly at the beginning because there's no trust point. Even when we would go and meet with investors, like they would ask you where you went to school, and they wouldn't even know when you would tell them the name, right? Like it's not
Tecnológico de Monterrey.
Unfortunately, exactly. Like even though I'm like, oh, it's like one of the best schools in Latin America, but it's just what it is. Like, they're very obviously American centric. And so it was hard. It was hard. And my co-founders all went to school in Italy, and so we were all sort of like from another place. It was hard for everyone to understand our backgrounds, but eventually what happened is that when we just kept our heads down, we raised a little bit of money from friends and family, and none of my friends and family because they didn't have any funds to invest, but we launched the first product on crowdfunding, and that was a huge success. We raised over 1.2 million in pre-orders just directly on Indiegogo, which is a public platform. Everyone could see the success that product had. And so at that point, we were validated. Now everyone said, okay, like this is interesting. And we finally got into Y Combinator after being rejected 2 times. And that sort of changed the trajectory of the business, because it gave us a bit of an in on a network that is really powerful and really valuable. And it helped us start connecting with the right people.
Wow. Such a big experience. And I mean, talking about the raising money, the gaining funds, all of this first part of the company, the YC experience, did you feel that it was maybe more challenging because it's a hardware company instead of a software company?
100%. It's harder to raise money for hardware. I think right now we're going through such interesting times in the market where a lot of the software valuations are dropping, right? So like things are sort of stabilizing before, but for many years, there's been a huge gap in terms of the multiples you would get in valuation for hardware company versus software, your recurring revenue versus just a one-time consumer goods purchase. So also sort of direct consumer brands have been overvalued at times and then undervalued. So it's been a roller coaster, and we've been doing this for 8 years now, like I mentioned. And so we've seen a lot of different cycles, but it is harder. There's not all investors are willing to put their money into hardware companies. So what has helped us is that we are a health company, and we are diversifying beyond hardware as well in terms of the products that we sell. So a couple of months ago, we announced the acquisition of a company that focuses on digital coaching. So now Aid Sleep, that is a mission-driven company, we want to help people get sleep fit. We're figuring out all the ways in which we can help you achieve sleep fitness. Some of those will be through our hardware, but also through digital tools, coaching, insights, reports, anything that will help you live healthier, live longer, sleep better. Those are all products we can build. And so that takes us outside of the realm of just being a pure hardware or consumer electronics company.
Wow, that's great. And I mean, you need to be super involved in the whole project, because you're not only taking the marketing side, but also you're a founder, right? So yeah. How was the experience of I was reading an article and I noticed that you and Mateo lived in the demo room for a couple of, I don't know, months or something like that. Yeah. So you had to try the actual pod, right? So how was that like?
Yeah, we are fortunate because we always get the first prototypes. So the first prototypes that go to any person to actually try it, Mateo and I will get them. One, because he's the CEO, but 2, because it's 2 of us. And so then they'll get feedback from 2 people who are very involved in developing the product. But yes, we lived in what was the office at the time, which was an apartment in San Francisco for a year. So when we moved from New York to San Francisco, we had this loft in the Soma neighborhood in San Francisco that was essentially the office, and it was also our apartment, and it was also the bedroom in that loft was basically the testing room. That's the space where, during the day we would wake up 7 a.m., get ready, and then the room was a part of the office. Our engineers would go in there and just tinker with it. And by the time we were going to bed in the evening, there were sensors everywhere and things we had to test and instructions for us on what to do. So that has always been the case. Even now, Matteo and I sleep on products that are yet to even be announced. And so it's just, that's part of the fun. But like you mentioned, as a founder, you get to be involved in a lot of facets, which is pretty cool. We've always set clear roles on what everyone focuses on, but I do get, especially because I lead the brand touches everything. And so understanding from, what are the technological innovations we're putting on the next products, and like, do those matter? Is that what people want? How do we message them? How do this fit into the larger vision? Like, I have to understand all of these pieces very early on and be able to provide my opinion on it.
And were you scared maybe at the beginning, with the first prototype, sleeping with Matteo? I know that the pod, it has like the temperature control or something like that you can divide the actual temperature. So you were like, okay, this is my side of the bed. This is your side of the mattress. Maybe my side is going to be cooler than yours. So how is that, it connects with water or something like that, right?
Yes. Yeah, it does. Well, the first product that we had was different. So before the pod, we had a different product that was more basic, and it was focusing more on sleep tracking, and then was only able to heat up. But the main function was sort of the tracking. It was the reason why it took so long for us to really be able to get to where we are today is because our product required a lot of algorithm development and training, because we are actually tracking your biometrics without any wearables. So when you go to bed and you lie down flat on your bed, you don't need to do anything. And the sensors on the pod are tracking your heart rate of rest, heart rate variability, respiratory rate, time of sleep, deep sleep, tosses and turns, like just a lot of information. So it took time. So we developed a first product that was more focused on like getting the sensors, understanding how do you build that sensor packet in order to track two people in bed at the same time, wearables, you need a lot of data, you need to develop algorithms, you need to validate those clinically against other devices that are sort of considered the golden truth, which would be sort of similar to what you would do at a sleep clinic. So we got to do all of that. I think Matteo has tweeted in the past pictures of me wearing tons of sensors to bed. So we recruit people within the team, or sometimes we have a group of beta customers who will opt in to participate in these studies where they will sleep on the pod, and then they will also use sensors that are attached and sort of stuck on different parts of your body to compare the data and be able to continue to refine our algorithms and become more accurate. So it's part of the fun. Like, I think I've never been scared. I trust our team, but also it is very important that we stay very close to the development of the product so we understand it. And at the end of the day, everyone in the company is using the pod. Everyone who joins our company and our team, they have a product, they have, they hopefully have to love it in order to work at the company, right? And they can also give feedback, and they can get that firsthand experience. And like they say in product building, you have to eat your own dog food. Otherwise, you're not going to know what your customers are going through.
Wow, exactly, totally. And I mean, what a better way to start and to actually build a community out of the product than actually letting the whole team try it, And talking about the pod, I was really curious because I studied communications as well, and I know marketing and all of that. So I was like, how do you create and how do you build such a big community out of a pod? How do you create the whole concept of sleep fitness when it didn't exist?
That is probably the most fun part of my work nowadays, and even since when we started focusing on it, because I always say very candidly that we made a lot of mistakes at the beginning of the company when we thought of our marketing and our positioning. We were essentially kind of hiding who we really were in order to imitate what we thought would give us success. We would look at companies that were what we consider comparable. So companies maybe in the smart home space or connected devices or fitness, and said, well, if this is how they look, it must be because it works. If this is what they talk about, it must be because it works. And that's what people want to hear. And like, if we just emulate that, we're going to succeed. And no, like, complete failure. Do not recommend that to anybody. And so we went through a process before launching the pod at the end of 2018, where we repositioned the entire brand. And that's an exercise that I think really changed also the trajectory of how people perceive us, which in turn led to the real creation of a community. That is when we defined that we have always been as a group of founders, we're big believers in the ability for technology to help you sleep better. That's pretty unique to us. There's a lot of sleep brands out there who will tell you don't use your phone in bed and like disconnect your devices or whatever it is. For us, we believe technology can be an enhancer when used right and when the products are developed for that purpose. we believe that sleep is a means to an end. People don't want to just sleep more, at least not our customer and the people we're talking to. They want to sleep well. They want to be able to feel great when they wake up in the morning. Use sleep as a means to feeling great, in a good mood, energized, productive. And we also think sleep is something that should be measured, prioritized, and optimized. So all of these are sort of very core tenets of what we believe. And with what we believe, we said, well, why don't we put this out there? What do we need to do as a company in order to package all of this in a way that we can communicate it very clearly? And then other people who also believe this are going to join us in this process. And that is what building this sort of community, or the way I described it, like we're building a movement. That's what it's all about. And so we came up with this concept of sleep fitness, and we decided that we are a sleep fitness company, and that's the category we're building. And sleep fitness also is a way to describe what it means to be healthy in your sleep. There were all these terms in the past where you could hear sleep deprivation, insomnia, sleep apnea, all the bad things about sleep, but there was no clear way to talk about sleep in health. So now we have it, right? We created it, and now you could say I'm sleep fit or I'm not sleep fit, but you're also working on it. And just like any other type of fitness, there's ups and downs, and you can get back on track. And what happened when we started putting that out there is that at the beginning, maybe a few people were talking about us as a sleep fitness company, but we kept at it, and we kept, continue to focus on these core parts of our DNA and staying true to them, from how we look to who we partner with, who the products we put on the site, how we speak, everything stayed very true to that DNA. And it started catching on. And there were more and more people who saw themselves reflected in what the brand stands for. And that has built this amazing community of people who not only buy the product, but they start being advocates for us and what we stand for. And they start using our own terminology out there by themselves. And I think that's the most magical part of it.
And especially now that you're talking about fitness, maybe the market thinks that it's only for athletes, right? So how will you change this mentality and open the market for everyone, right? Or what does 8 Sleep means when it says that you need to have the athlete's mentality?
Yeah, actually having an athlete's mentality is one of our internal values. We see sleep fitness definitely as a very performance-driven term, and 8 Sleep definitely is probably a performance-driven brand. And it is in our hands to extend this concept of performance to other aspects of life. Athletes are figures that gravitate towards our product for sure. We have hundreds of professional athletes who sleep on them. We're an official partner of the Mercedes Formula One team, and we have CrossFit champions that sleep on it. And we also have DJs like Steve Aoki, and we also have actors, and we also have CEOs, and we have venture capitalists. Like, it's insane. Sure. Like, if I could say all the names of all the famous people who sleep on it, like, you'd be in shock. It's really amazing. And it's, I think, the most rewarding part of what we do. But we know that over time, because athletes and top performers, as we define them, are influential to many of us, whether you're an athlete or not, this is going to help us build trust on what we do, and it's going to help us spread the word. And I always tell my team that our goal should be to make sleep fitness relevant to all of our grandmothers or grandfathers, right? It's just about time. One of the core principles for building the brand and the positioning is that you can't be all things to all people. So we are focused on where we are today, and that is very important, because when you're building a movement, you need those people to be very passionate about it. And you can only achieve that level of passion if there's this clear sort of limit to like who belongs and who doesn't. That's just how humans behave. And over time, those limits will expand. The bounds of this movement will expand, and our grandparents can come in and they will understand what sleep fitness is, and our marketing will have to look different and evolve in order to get there. But we're not in a rush, and we think like a few years down the line, we're basically going to be able to achieve what Nike did, going from being a runner's brand to being for everybody and the everyday athlete as they define it.
Every concept. And it's amazing, because at the end of the day, everyone needs a pod, everyone sleeps, everyone deserves this rest. And exactly. I mean, including technology into it, it's amazing. And you're including habits and the tracking device. That's amazing. I mean, I've never heard of it before. And the fact that you are, I don't know, into there every day, 24/7, it's part of being a CEO, right? And I wanted to ask you about are there any critical challenges that you have faced in the development process when it comes to the purchasing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of challenges, I think, in building the product, a lot of challenges in building the business. So there's, like just growing the business, there's its own sets of challenges. Like in our case, we're a direct to consumer company. And so how do you build awareness for a brand that people can only find online? And advertising online is only becoming more expensive. And so what is the content creation strategy like that maybe allows you to get to people in a more cost-effective way? Now we're starting to do, which we have done in the past, a lot of explorations around retail. And do we do pop-ups? Do you go with third-party retailers? Because in the purchasing process, we have found that people, there's a certain number of a percentage of our potential customers who would want to try it before they buy it. So that's sort of pushing us to think, well, what would that look like? We're also doing a lot of work with hotels. So we are in close to 100 rooms now across the United States and expanding. And so those are just places where people can discover, but also if you are considering it, you could probably try it as you're traveling on the road, and that could then lead to a conversion on our site.
Wow. And maybe let's say the biggest technical challenge you have ever faced. Maybe I think, or I imagine that it was at the beginning, right? Whenever you were first developing the product.
There's probably still a lot now. Like I think that the bar is always rising in terms of what we're trying to achieve from a technical perspective. And so that's why there's always a lot of technical challenges, because we're constantly innovating. Initially, yes, it was very hard to just gather enough data in order to build algorithms. Like anyone who has used our products for a long time could really speak to how much they've improved in terms of accuracy, right? Because the longer we're out there on the field, the more people are using it, the more information, the better that the intelligence of the product actually gets. So now people are able to integrate devices and wearables, and we can read all this data and send you correlations and tell you when you run, here's how you sleep, but when you go cycling, here's how you sleep, right? And so that's pretty magical, but it took many, many years in order to get there. So that was very technically challenging. The other part has probably been just when we think about manufacturing a product, right? When you're like designing it in your head and then translating that into a manufacturable product that could be built at scale. So as founders, we've had to hire people into our team that are really knowledgeable in those areas because they were really foreign to us. So even just one, understanding all of that and the limitations of like, how do you design a product and how do you make sure that you're taking to manufacturing something that can be built at scale, that doesn't have to be built by hand, because then the costs go higher. And there's a lot of technical things there that every time I hear the team talk about them, I'm very surprised, because it's not what I get to work on day in and day out. And you realize how much more complex it is to build a business than people think.
Totally. Wow. And I mean, talking about your routine, I know now that you do not drink coffee or alcohol. So, I mean, that helps you in some kind of way, right? But I mean, do you feel like your routine has changed, your habits, everything has changed since you started the company?
The routine has definitely changed, but I attribute most of it just to age. Like, I think I just aged in 8 years. And so you change, right? Your body changes, your interest in sort of prioritizing your health really changes as well. And I have learned a lot more about sleep, but I've always been a good sleeper. I've always slept a lot. And so that hasn't been a challenge. I don't have kids yet. So, a lot of people say, well, you don't have kids, and so that's why you sleep a lot. Well, yes, that's why I can still sleep a lot, but I have become much more regular and consistent in my schedule. And that was probably the biggest change, of just making sure that I go to bed more or less at the same time every day, including weekends, and then wake up at the same time. And there are exceptions, but for the most part, thanks to that routine, my body knows how to just sort of fall asleep at a certain time and wake up at a certain time. So that's pretty helpful. I drink a little bit of coffee now. I didn't in the first years of the company, but eventually I just got into it. But it's more milk than coffee, probably.
Me too. That's the best part. Wow. And I mean, building a company with, I'm pretty sure that everyone asks you this, but I needed to hear it from you. How is it building a company with your husband, with your now husband? Because were you married once you started, or you were boyfriend and girlfriend when you started dating?
No, yeah, we were not married. We were engaged when we started the company. We were not married. For us, it's been a lot of fun. Like, I just don't know how this relationship could have worked without this, because we really have poured so much of our energy and time, both of us, that just being able to have that relationship where we understand each other, what we're going through, when he's stressed, when I'm stressed, when maybe working on a big campaign or a product launch, and so my days may be longer, he just gets it. Like, it's just the expectations are pretty clear, because we know as a family what we are aiming towards, what we're working towards. And I think that's pretty cool. And I've had a chance over the years as I became an angel investor to invest in other companies founded by siblings or partners, that traditionally when we were starting and investors very early on would find out, like we would tell them, or they would find out we were a couple, they would shy away from it. And I always thought that was so dumb, because there's actually so many success stories out there of real big companies that have been built by partners. And I think if it's the right partnership as partners, there's no reason why it couldn't work in business. And actually you get a family that has no plan B. There's no backup salary. There's no backup business. You're all in. And so what I have seen working with other couple founders is that they just tend to give it all, because really the family is betting on that one company to succeed.
Wow, so you're totally all in. It's amazing, and it's something to admire. And do you feel like their relationship has gotten stronger? I mean, do you divide the working hours between, okay, I just arrived home and let's make dinner and we're not talking about business anymore? Or do you are like, okay, Mateo, this happened tonight, or how does that work?
No, we don't divide it. I think over time, we've just learned to integrate it. When you are an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter how big your business is or how small, it's just going to be something that will consume your life. It is what it is. And I always say that to any friend who's thinking of starting a business. I'm like, don't. And if after I tell you don't do it, you still do it, then you really want to, right? Like, I'm going to tell you all the bad things. And if you still go for it, like, then you are really, really passionate about this. But that's just what entrepreneurship is. And I saw that growing up. My dad was an entrepreneur. And so you have to deal with it. And for us, it means that when we sit down at dinner and he asks me how your day was, I'll be like, well, I interviewed this candidate, and then I also had this one-on-one with this person, and then I also have this problem. And the context in which we have those conversations is different, right? Because he is my manager, he's the CEO, and I'm the head of marketing, so I report to him. So when we are in more sort of, let's say, personal moments like dinner or weekend, I'm not reporting to him. I'm having an exchange with a person that I admire, I trust, I respect, and I want to hear his feedback. But he also has a lot of context on all the things I'm talking to him about, so it helps. And so that's the only sort of line that we've differentiated, is that I'm not here to share with you because I'm reporting to you in a very serious moment. I want to chat with you as a co-founder in that moment, which, the co-founder relationship is very different from when you're managing someone directly.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really, I mean, you're a case of success, Alexandra. I don't know if you realize, but I mean, having that after 8 years now, do you realize what you have built? Like, do you wake up in the morning and be like, wow, this is my company. This is what I founded. This is what I create. Like, this community is something that did not exist 8 years ago, right?
Yeah,
so how do you
I
feel
think
right
we
now?
don't. Yeah, it's a great point, because we try to remind each other of that a lot. And it's usually, I think personality-wise, I tend to do that more naturally than Mateo does. I remind him a lot of that, right? And we wake up so many times with tweets from our community and people saying, I love this and I love that. And it's like, this is why we do what we do. And we also try to remind the team about it every Friday when we have our all hands. We'll share stories that people send us during the week. So that is the most important part. And I find it to be the most rewarding part of building a consumer product, is that people are actually using it every single day, right? Like, there's nothing like that. Like, I don't care if I could have a bigger company valuation building a financial technology startup or whatever. I don't care, because I love this opportunity to build something that people use every day. And also it's so impactful. Like, people sleeping better is just a net positive for the world. I'm not just selling you clothes. I'm building something that when I sell it to you, it's because it's going to impact your life for the better. And the moments when it becomes clearer, or it's sort of like an aha moment that what we're building matters, is when people sometimes, in some situations, I'm not saying we're really recognizable faces, but we tend to go around sometimes wearing swag from our company. So we'll travel with our cap with 8 Sleep, or we'll go around the city with it. And sometimes people will stop, especially Mateo, because he has a big following on Twitter, and say oh, are you the founder of 8 Sleep? And they'll tell him, or I'll be like, can I take a picture with you? I love your product. I've been using it. Or they'll be like, my ex-girlfriend kept it because she really wanted it after we lived together, and now we broke up and I want to buy another one. And all these stories, right? And people open up, and that could be, anyone from a normal person to anytime we've been in environments where there may be maybe a famous celebrity and be like, I use your product, right? And there's nothing like that. I think, yeah, that gives you a bit of a heart stop, and you say, wow, look at how far we've come compared to when we were in that San Francisco apartment tinkering with things in a very small studio.
Wow, that's super rewarding. And I mean, how many people do you have in the company now? Like you started being 4, or maybe you and Mateo and then the other two co-founders joined. And now you're, how many engineers, how many people in marketing or?
Yeah, we're not that big actually as a company. We're probably like 80, 90 people right now. And we achieve a lot. So that is one of our core principles of building the organization, is like being very, very efficient in terms of how many people we hire. And yeah, the team is amazing, which is why we're able to do what we do.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much, Alexandra. And do you have any last advice for people, for entrepreneurs starting on this path?
It's actually probably something I was talking about with one of my team members who's our design lead, and she was asking me of times whenever I've had to make decisions without having all of complete set of information. And as an entrepreneur, sometimes you need to trust your gut, and trust your gut, or your sense of what's right is also developed over time. And I think there's that fine line that for entrepreneurs, you have to be always developing. My gut has become smarter as I've been exposed to people that are smarter than me, or people who have achieved more things than I have, and mentors and advisors and investors, and for other entrepreneurs who I can learn from, or I listen to also in podcasts or books. So develop your gut, grow it, grow your intuition, but also listen to it when it matters.
Wow, that's great. Great advice. Thank you. Not only for entrepreneurs, but for everyone who's listening to this podcast. So thank you so much, Alexandra. And thank you so much for being here, sharing your experiences. Remember that you can also find more information directly on our podcast, directly on our website, interesting articles, interesting interviews like this one on controlhub.com/builder-nation. Alexandra, where can people find you? I know that we can find Mateo on Twitter. He's like a Twitter star. But
yeah, also on Twitter. You can probably find me there sometimes when he'll tag me. No, but I'm most active on Twitter, so definitely find us there.
Okay, that's amazing. So thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your experiences in Sleep, which is definitely great. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
Of course. Thank you as well.